Welcome to Let's Take a Moment for Youth. This podcast is brought to you by the Wheelock College of Education and Human Development's Center for Future Readiness at Boston University. My name is Scott Solberg, and I'm joined by
Annie Bell
and
Shraven Gateson.
All right. The Take a Moment series is designed to explore innovations that create opportunities for all children and youth to develop their full potential. Our podcast is designed for those of you interested in or who are currently working in schools, community-based organizations, or are concerned parents and caregivers seeking new ideas and resources. Annie, tell us about today's topic.
Okay, so today we are going to be discussing AI in education, primarily the middle and secondary grades, and AI in relation to career development. It's been a hot topic here in the U.S., and it is also around the world. So as a bonus, we're joined by a special guest today. Scott, let's introduce him.
Oh my gosh, so excited to introduce Nikos Drosos, who is a professor, an associate professor at the European University of Cyprus. He designs, implements, and evaluates career development policy and practice. Kind of sounds familiar to our center, yes, because similar things we do. And in fact, Nikos and I have so much in common in terms of the work we do, and I've learned so much from him. So, Nikos, it is so exciting that you're going to join our Take a Moment for Youth podcast today. In fact, we're going to have you on this podcast, and we're going to have you on the next one too. So, which will be a great thing. So, Nico, tell us about just a little bit more about your background and kind of the work you do. And welcome.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Nikos Drosos. I'm an associate professor of career guidance and counseling at European University Cyprus. And to be honest, I work at the intersection of career development, mental health, and the future of work, especially in Greece and in Cyprus. My research and practice focus on how we help people reconstruct their careers in a rapidly changing labor markets. And especially nowadays, my focus is on how we can help teenagers, adolescents, in designing their career future in a world that is changing very rapidly.
Awesome. Now, we just full disclosure here, I was just in Greece visiting you, and you gave me such a wonderful tour of Athens. It was what has to be one of the most exciting experiences I've had in so long. It was so great. And I was there for a conference that you were organizing. And so tell us a little bit about the nature of that conference and why AI became the topic that you centered it around.
Yes, the conference, it was about artificial intelligence and career guidance and counseling. How the new developments in artificial intelligence will actually change the way that we provide career counseling and career guidance services, and how we can help adolescents in transitioning from the high school to university and then to the labor market.
Fantastic. And what's exciting about this podcast is I think you and I are looking at the potential opportunities and the kinds of ways that we need to support our youth in being able to both use AI with the career counseling to support and facilitate their identity development and also their planning and things like that, so they can be more, this whole idea of needing to enter the world of work with the right degrees to get into those positions, the right skill sets, and that kind of mismatch is one of the big challenges we have in the labor force. So you and I look at this and see great opportunities. We're joined today with two Gen Zs who have very different opinions, and this will be our first podcast where we have some pretty good disagreements, but we all caring, all supportive. But there's some issues, in this space, and maybe what we want to do is start with that a little bit. We're going to think, I think Shrey and Annie both want to, give some ideas around some of the cautions and some of the things that, at the conference when I presented with you all in Greece, we didn't have time, and the time we had to really talk about these issues of sustainability. But when we started talking this morning in prep for today, boy, was that front and center. So who would like to start in terms of talking that? Shrey, is that on your end here?
Yep.
And talk a little bit about your context that you're coming from in thinking about this.
Yeah. So I have a lot of questions about AI and career development specifically as well. Maybe because I'm very cautious about it, or maybe because I'm approaching it in a conservative way. I think it is a great tool because initially when AI started becoming more and more popular, I was pretty fascinated by it, and I tried using it, right? I didn't know much about it, and nobody knew much about it, right? Because it was very new in the space. And I was in college at that point. I was, I think, a sophomore or junior in college. And my friend was showing it to me, and she was like, "Hey, look at this. It writes your whole essay for you." And I was like, "What
Whoops.
do you mean?" Like, that's kind of crazy, because I was like, well, how do you have your own opinions on it? Or how does your voice shine through that essay? Like, how does that work if you're having this thing write your whole essay? So that was my first question to her, to which she didn't know the answer to. Neither did I. So I think that was one of my first times where I was like, this is kind of a crazy thing to have around.
A little scary.
A little scary, because it's just scary the extent that you are able to use it, because there aren't a lot of regulations around it. As AI got more popular in my classes, professors would have certain regulations or guidance around it, right? They would require us to put a statement of like, how did you use AI in this project? Or if you did not, you have to state that as well. So I think those things really helped people, but also it comes to the fact that a lot of my peers were not very honest about it either. Because our guideline was, do not use it to generate ideas. You can use it to help your grammar and things like that, but you can't use it to creatively think.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, so I kind of agreed with that at that point, and I still do. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think you have another level too, right? I think you are looking to become a lawyer, and as a lawyer, looking at it from an international, national perspective. What about the policies there that you're hoping to see?
I'm hoping to see, I guess, like, okay, I'll give you an example, right? So a couple months ago, or actually a year ago, I can't believe it's been a year, but during the last election, there were a lot of AI generated videos, right, about people endorsing people, right? And people did not know, like, folks did not know if it was real or not, because you can't tell anymore. I think that's the part where it gets scary, because you don't have regulations around it, and people, I've been networking with different attorneys, and they're, especially in the intellectual property field, they are saying, yeah, we do not know how to start with this, like how to start implementing regulations, or we need so many laws around it, because it's being used in different ways that are kind of unimaginable.
Yeah. Nikos, what about from your end? Is this any of this resonating in terms of discussions you've been having?
Yes, exactly the same discussion.
Yeah.
Actually, what you highlighted is how are we going to deal with artificial intelligence in the next months? How we can find a balance, or how are we going to do it in the universities? Talked about the assignments, but maybe we will find a balance. Or we always find a balance. We will find the regulations that will be that will regulate how we can have the assignments. What I'm interested in is is how are we going in the long term deal with the consequences of artificial intelligence. It is certain that artificial intelligence will take over many of the tasks in many jobs and occupations. So people will actually have to reskill and upskill in a regular basis in the next decades. So I think that maybe our focus should be on how are we going to prepare adolescents for a world that will always be changing in in a very fast pace.
Yeah, and I think the theme that we had in our discussions that you just hit on and summarized beautifully is that this is moving so fast, and it's moving faster than our ability to cope with the implications. And the kind of regulations or policies are critical if we're going to make sure that people are accessing it in a way that's ethical, as well as the systems being ethical. Some of the systems for decision making may understand the individual's race and economic background and may shape the information accordingly. And so we have to make sure that the systems are not doing that kind of bias. And there are systems to do that, but are all of the different systems, and can we have that evidence base, right? That it's not being biased and things like that. So there's definitely some of those fears. And I know, Annie, you've got some strong feelings about all this.
I do, yes. I think I will preface all of this by just saying that I'm approaching AI generally with a spirit of anxiety and caution, I think pretty wholeheartedly. AI data centers, I mean, there's more than 600 of them apparently in my home state of Virginia, and every time I go home, I feel like I see more and more of them built, and I've seen the way that it changes, landscape and farmland is going to data centers, and it makes me a little bit sad for the way that it's impacting, local communities. I think that that's maybe something that I don't know a lot of people are talking about lately. But yes, I generally approach it with a sense of caution.
So on the one hand, just what are the policies for how we're going to allow them into spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how they're taking over spaces. You were also mentioning before we started the speed with which they go up.
Yes. Yeah. Data center construction, my sense of it is that it's very, very quick. Start to finish, I feel like you can complete one in about a month, just from what I've seen. Mm-hmm. I don't know specific timelines, but they're sort of giant warehouse shells. The biggest thing is the actual machinery that goes inside them, but the physical structures, once the land is clear, it's a matter of, weeks, not months. And, they largely don't have people that work inside them. And there's a lot of, the cooling systems and the electrical and infrastructure needed to support them, and that sort of surrounds them. But no, the construction of data centers is very quick.
Yeah, and then concerns too about the electricity usage and water
Mm-hmm.
usage and different things on the planet as being a significant challenge.
Yeah, there was a lot of data that came out of Virginia over the summer. Virginia gets pretty hot and humid, and data centers need a lot of cooling anyway. And people in the surrounding areas, pulling from the same grid, their electrical bills were going up by hundreds and hundreds of dollars because the demand on the grid was no longer just residential and businesses. It was data centers. And they ended, private homeowners ended up sharing in that cost. And so I think that there are
real consequences
and considerations that maybe weren't talked about. And I think that goes back to part of what Nikos was saying is it's not even just, how it's used by students and in schools, but it's the long-term implications of AI and that development and innovation, over the next few decades. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. And then Shrey, that goes back to your point too about needing to have, some real regulations. I mean, why should the cost of this be borne by the homeowners, right? And maybe this isn't the best place to have it. I know Montana's becoming they're going all in on this, and they have the size of their population is so small, their land is so big, and they're a little bit cooler around the year. So maybe it's part of it is where these things can go that would be the most, sustainable, or at least provide some level of sustainability without having this huge impact on the urban infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything. Maybe I just answered your point, but I apologize. I've been just like I said. We've had such a great conversation around these issues as being kind of scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that there's maybe a fine line between and maybe it's just an opinion-based thing, really, what the best use of the land is.
Yeah, because nobody asked that question.
The best use of the clean water supply, is that really data centers, or is it farmland, or is it replanting open fields with native plants? Reforestation. Yes, Montana has thousands and thousands and thousands of acres.
Do we want all of that
But
to
do
go
we
towards
want that to
data
be
centers?
data centers or going towards like, and that's, I mean, that's, I feel like maybe a personal opinion more so than even something that you could regulate. But
I think there's a lot of people who share those opinions. So yes, I know. That's why I wanted to bring it out so that we can at least put it out there that we know there's a lot of challenges in this. Nikos, what about on your end? Is data center and other sustainable issues around data centers, has that been an issue in Europe as well?
I, I really like the term that you are using, sustainability, because a lot of discussion is about how are we going to develop sustainable careers and sustainable lives, not only in environmental terms, but generally. How are we going to have sustainability in our lives?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just one more example of the thinking about sustainability. It's not just environment, it's quality of life. There's just so many elements that we're talking about here. As you're talking about farmland being taken away, the impact on the community. There's just so many sustainable issues that are brought up just out of this one topic, Nico.
Right.
Yeah. So we have one more point we want to bring up, and then we're going to talk about career development and kind of the different opportunities and challenges, and we'll talk about a Stanford report that really dug into that. But Annie, you had one other area that, and I think you and Shrey have some strong feelings about it, and I know as professors, Nikos, we're very concerned about this as well. But that is the ethical use of AI in terms of how do we do it in a way that facilitates critical thinking rather than taking it away? How are we doing it in a way that support? Well, I'll let Andy, you tell us. What are the things you have that you're worried about in all this? We don't have data yet, but we have a lot of worries and questions, right?
Well, I think that's part of my anxiety generally, is that I feel like AI is this like rampantly spreading tool that people are encouraged or asked to use, but I just have so many questions left, and maybe they'll never go away, but I hope I can start to get some answers.
Well, let's get your list out. What's the list?
Well, so there's the environmental impacts, and that's, land use, etc. Another thing is the ethical use and the regulations, and how to use them, like how to teach ethical use of them, determining what that is, and sort of this like fairly meta question of like, well, is AI, generative AI, for example, ethical at all if it's based off a scraped, internet wide of intellectual property, so like then there's, you know what I mean? Like if it's
the intellectual property components,
right, that have trained these AI models, like, is it really ethical at all? I think that's one question that I have. Another is the sort of the metaphor that I used earlier is like people were so scared of the innovation of the automobile before there were regulations
and safety standards,
safety standards and a like societal norm of like this is what you do and don't do when you drive a car. And it was really, 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 really unsafe, early on.
Yeah.
And as legality got involved, as regulations got involved, and safety standards went up to meet that innovation where it was, it became something safer to do. And it's still not without risks. But I think that's one thing is like, how can we teach safe use of it or, meter it maybe so that it's safe across populations? How do we correct for bias in the training models?
Yeah, let me, I'm going to quote Nick Bergazzi, and maybe it's an IP issue, but apologize to him.
Okay.
But he talks about being born in the last century. And so being the one at the table here who was born in the last century, there was a time when I was a child, we didn't have seatbelts, right? And there was a big backlash, to that, especially in states that feel like, no laws are going to, do things. So I think we're in a similar situation. And I think, Trey, again, from, an emerging lawyer that you are, right, and thinking in those ways, this is a significant issue. How can we get these kinds of policies and practices in, and how do we do it in a way that is not so much that not that it's going to go, that they're the right kinds, I guess, of kinds of regulations?
Yeah, so follow up to that, there's just so much going on. But follow up to both of you was a big question that I have is, what does ethical use even look like? Like, how do you make something like this safe to use? Like, obviously, like your example with automobiles, it's a physical thing.
Right.
But AI, like, I don't know.
It's kind of amorphous.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't.
Like,
it's not,
what
like,
does it
physically
even look
definable.
like?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I appreciate, Annie, I think the automobile is a fantastic way to get into this conversation. But what you're also saying is, but there's no there.
Right.
I don't have a physical thing that I'm trying to create safety on. How are we creating it in such a fast-moving IT? Nikos, what about these topics? Are these also things that you're hearing about, and are they reflecting on in Europe as well?
Yes, actually, I'm in charge of a European project now that we are actually dealing with how we are going to provide ethical career counseling and guidance services in the artificial intelligence age. And it's not only about safety. Safety is a part of how we can provide ethical career guidance, but it's not the only thing. A lot of other matters have to be taken into account. And, but what we should have in mind is that artificial intelligence is here to stay. It is going to be something permanent. So we have to find ways of using it. It has the potential to be very useful in our lives. So we have to see how we can actually make use of it and reduce the challenges and the dangers.
No, that's fantastic. And I know our colleagues, Deidre Hughes and Chris Percy in the UK are going to be launching and bringing us together to do some studies to see how, just to learn how it's being used in these spaces with students and with educators and perception. So we need to do a lot more research to really discover kind of what these practices can be and how our education community is starting to grab onto this and use it effectively. You mentioned earlier, Shrey, the idea that if a TA in a class, right, is grading and they want to use a generative AI to help do the grading, where does that fit on the ethical spectrum, right? Yeah, and it's certainly for efficiencies, right? It's also a skill set, and so then and I think Nikos, this is where you and I are going to move into the conversation around career development. Is our students need to learn those skills, right, if they're going to be competitive in the world of work. And so why don't we start with that in terms of now this report from Stanford and some of the insights. So I think, Shrey, you're up. You were going to talk a little bit about that, but just to give some context. So Stanford grabbed huge amounts of data from adults over the years to see the impact this is having on their jobs, right? As AI is coming in, who's getting hired, who's not? Is income going up? The answer is no, it's not going up. You're doing different kinds of work, but you're not necessarily getting more income out of that. But it's definitely, there's some impact on those emerging adults, and we'll talk about that as well as we go through this. So, so what are some insights from the report? I think there was what was the title? Canary in a Coal Mine?
Yes.
Yeah. Such an interesting. So what they're saying is, if they're saying canary in a coal mine, they're saying we're looking for those indicators of danger, right? So this is great for the Gen Z group.
All right. So I'm going to talk about some of the central findings of the report.
Yeah.
And as we go through each one of them, we can discuss what each of them means and looks like in the field of career development as well, right?
Yeah.
So the first is AI will affect nearly all jobs, but not equally. And by affect, they don't entirely mean it in a negative way, right? They say that it is a task transformation way. So that is, like you said earlier, people will have to learn to adapt to how to use AI in their workplace. And without it, they're like you said earlier, they're not going to be hired then, right? So what do you think?
So let me just phrase it, and then I want to go to you, Nikos, to talk and reflect on it as well. So we have to separate two ways in which AI is impacting the world of work. One is where it's just taking the job away. Any kind of automation type opportunity, right? And lawyers are part of that too. They're starting to, you're able to go and generate your own legal briefs, right, and things like that. Certainly the accounting becomes really automated, right? One of my students was asking for a lesson plan example, and I said, well, why don't you go into ChatGPT and say, generate a lesson plan? There's things that could be there, but that can be easier or make our lives more automated, that we're not needing necessarily certain jobs. But there's another type, and that's augmented, and that's the area we're focusing on. So what are those jobs where the AI is helping you become more efficient? It's helping you speed and as well as the quality of the work you're putting out, and how do we do that? And so Nikos, any thoughts on that topic around the fact that it's shifting the world of work?
I'll highlight what you said earlier, that it is mostly task transformation, not just job loss, not mainly job loss. So that means that the biggest challenge is not technology, is identity, it is confidence, it is life design. People will have to find out who they are and who they want to be in a rapidly changing world. I don't like the word adaptation because it implies passive adaptation to the changes. We want to be energetic, to be agent, and to see how they want their lives to be.
So we want especially our youth, right? We want them to be proactive in shaping the way in which this new technology can support them on their different pathways. Is that correct?
Exactly, and we have to keep in mind that it is that artificial intelligence will actually take over some tasks of the jobs, but the jobs will remain. But people will have to upskill and reskill in order to maintain their job. So it's a very different world of work than the one that we grew up in.
Yeah. And then Trey, you said that it doesn't affect every industry in the same way. So what are those industries that are going to be less impacted? The report was bringing out that would be less impacted by AI.
So the report, well, firstly, the more impacted ones are like the clerical jobs and the administrative focused jobs. They're like highly exposed to AI, but the jobs that are not as exposed is like career technical education, apprenticeships, and jobs that come from them, right? So
Like
they're
more
not
vocational,
I'm sorry.
like more vocational, physically
Yes.
involved jobs.
Yeah.
So plumbing and electricity, things like that. What about the durable skill jobs, the ones that take more human skills? Yeah. So the idea here, I think, and Nikos, maybe you can talk about that too. We need to talk to people, right? There are some occupations where the relationship, the access to empathy, the access to caring, encouraging adults is critical. And it feels like those sectors, at least that's what they're saying, those sectors are going to be protected. I'm thinking nursing, I'm thinking about counseling, those kinds of pieces, right? And I know that AI can help facilitate, and there can be some chat bots and everything else, but at some point, that human element is critical and can't be replaced by AI. Nikos, what are your thoughts around that space?
Artificial intelligence can imitate empathy very well, but it can imitate it. It cannot have empathy, and we should be aware of it. So it can actually help us in the first steps of a counseling procedure in order to give information or something like that, but it cannot replace the human touch, the human connection.
Yeah, and go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Nikos. This is great.
No,
That's it. Yeah.
that was.
So the other thing that is about it is because it can't replace creativity.
Right.
And when we talk about sustainable development goals at the UN level, right, Nikos, and we talk about all the areas of the planet that we need to start addressing, it's not using old solutions. We have to create new solutions. And so we need a creative economy and really to find ways to build that creativity. And that's something that you're not going to get out of the AI, right? It's gonna be able to synthesize, but it's not going to be able to create new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's good. All right.
All right.
Good topic. What's another one?
Yep, another one is occupational exposure varies by gender and race.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So
Who knew?
Who could have guessed?
who could have guessed?
Everybody.
Is it a here we go again?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So women's jobs have more exposure to AI, and Black and Latino workers have unequal impacts. So both, like the thing that we discussed earlier was how careers that are more vocational and physical, they're not as exposed, but as well as like the more clerical ones are more exposed. So there's a mix between Black and Latino workers with that as well. Annie, what do you think?
I feel like this is a here we go again. I really do. I do, and it's been a few months since we talked about this report with the State Leaders Network, and I sort of want to dive into it more again, but I think one question that I have is sort of the consideration or maybe the nuance of like, well, statistically women are not filling as many blue collar jobs, and those are the ones that are less impacted. And so I'm wondering if that's part of where women's exposure is higher, is because we do fill fewer blue collar jobs. We're more often like working in office spaces, or in jobs that could be augmented by
or replaced
AI,
by,
or replaced by.
Yeah.
And I guess the question about the unequal impacts with Black and Latino workers is, I'm curious about like unequal in what ways? Like what is the sort of meat of that conclusion? And then
Well, let's take it from Nikos on our end, right? We're designing career development programs and systems, right, to help youth and young adults be able to have access to these kinds of jobs. So as you think about those individuals, and we can also put low-income youth in that population, our NEET youth, right, those that are not in education, employed, or in training, how do we think about ways that we can support them to get the skills needed to move into these augmented AI kind of occupations? Thoughts, Nico, on that? Nikos?
Yes, and that's a big similarity between USA and Europe. The things that you just described are the same things that we are facing as well. And we are trying to reduce people who are not in training, education, or employment. And how we do this with intervention programs in schools. And that's why in career guidance now we are trying to highlight the importance of skill development in schools. So we need career counselors in every school facilitating skills development, and among skills is energetic interest for the career readiness, career adaptability, and this kind of skills.
Yeah. So it seems like there's two ways I think that you and I look at this. One is we need them to we need them to know the skills they will need in the world of work. And we know that AI is going to be a component of that. We also can use AI to support them in facilitating their awareness of themselves, right? Their own self-exploration. We can also use AI to help them identify pathways that might align with their skills so that they can establish goals that are meaningful and relevant to them. Any thoughts on that, Nikos, in terms of, I know that's similar work you're doing as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to highlight that it's not just the work of career counselors, it's also a policy matter. It's also how its government sees and understands the criticality of having career guidance in schools and career guidance that is contemporary and is actually encompassing things like artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence literacy and skill development.
Hmm. And I think the other thing that I'm excited about now, that being the optimist on this too, is these are malleable skills. These are skills that all youth, young adults can learn, and in learning can make them more employable for some of these different areas. But the one area that I wanted to highlight is in that Stanford report, our young adults are not doing well getting jobs in augmented AI firms, right? So firms that are augmenting their efficiencies and the work they're doing with AI, the more they're doing that, the less likely it is that a young adult is going to be able to get an entry-level job in that space. And the argument was that, and this is part of the generative process, the system doesn't just come up with all the right things. It's a conversation you have with the individual. And so if our youth are not getting access to the context of the work and understanding the full issues and details of what's happening in that job, they don't have context from which to use the AI effectively in an augmented way. And so I was just curious, Nikos, on that. And I know I talked about it at the conference as well, but just thinking through that about what are the implications then for career counselors and educators, and as you said, it's policies as well that we need to support that kind of immersive experiences. But what are your thoughts around that?
In at least in Europe, in order to explain this phenomenon, they are talking about a skill gap that there are vacancies in businesses like the ones that you described, but there are not skilled people in order to obtain these positions.
Mm.
This is quite superficial because it's not so easy to say that people have to adapt in these changes,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to upskill, reskill. You people have to understand. Governments have to understand that it's our employment, our work is a part of our identity. It's
Mm-hmm.
not so easy to change your identity. You have to provide career counseling services and career counseling that will help people find out who am I now, how is to critically see the world of work, and to see in this world of work, in this rapidly changing world of work, who am I going to be? How can I design? How can I construct my career in so that I will be happy,
Mm-hmm.
so that I will be satisfied? In at least in Greece and in Cyprus, we see many people upskill or reskill just because there are training courses. So it's not part of their actual long-term plan, and a lot of money are being given in order to have these courses, and the result is not as good as we would have
Mm-hmm.
or as we should have.
Yeah. And then what about, like, how might the European, many of the countries have a youth guarantee, right, where they can get access to work-based learning opportunities within the kind of selected goals that they have? Thoughts about how we can redesign those experiences to make sure that youth are getting the immersive experiences that they need to really understand the value of these skills.
There are uh, there are opportunities, but these opportunities have to be part of a long-term plan of their own,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I'm highlighting that career counseling is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
If just provide training opportunities without helping people understand or make meaning of these changes that they are experiencing, then the result will not be as good as we would expect.
That's right. That's right. And so in our context here in the United States, we talk about it as having a program, a career development program that might be facilitated by educators, counselors, and in those activities for that program, as you're saying, there needs to be those activities that help them find meaning. It's about identity development. It's about being able to see themselves in these spaces. They need access to role models that are going to be encouraging, and they need to know, what do I need to know, right? There's that piece of it. I think the AI systems can help facilitate some of that discovery as they're moving forward and helping youth understand in the ethical ways to find that kind of information and be sure that it's reliable and valid. But at the end of the day, we're trying to help the youth and their families understand what they need to know and what are the pathways that they can begin doing to learn about it or to gain the skill set. So Nikos, this has been fascinating. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity and also for the great time we had in Greece, and look forward to visiting Cyprus in the future as well. It sounds fantastic, the work that's going on, and also just the passion that your country has for the community and just building, thinking through some of the complex issues here.
It was a pleasure having you here. So you are very welcome to come to Cyprus as well.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And we're just saying, we're basically just taking a break because we're going to have you come back for our next podcast as well. But I just wanted to, again, thank you. And it's just been a pleasure to work with you and learn so much from what's happening in the European sector. And we'll explore that in more depth in our next one. So, Trey?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nikos. This was a really lovely conversation, I think. Thank you for taking a moment for youth to access resources from today's conversation. Go to our Center for Future Readiness YouTube channel, where you will find links to these resources and many more. And coming soon, we will have a resource portal.
Oh my gosh.
For
Is it?
many more resources.
Come on, Annie. What's going on here?
I don't even know right now.
So
I do, but I'm not going to get into
we have an IT group we're waiting on, and they're just, they're so good at what they do that it has to be perfect. And we're like, okay, but we need it now. So soon.
Soon. Coming soon.
Okay.
And we'll hope you'll join us here on Take a Moment as we continue to discuss future readiness.
Absolutely. And at Wheelock College of Education and Human Development, we're looking for undergraduate and graduate students who want to transform the lives of children and youth throughout the world. As a research fellow with the Center for Future Readiness, we're especially interested in those of you ready to become the next generation of school counselors and career development professionals. Goodbye from me, Annie Bell.
Goodbye from me, Shravan Gateson.
And goodbye for me, Scott Solberg.